Welcome back to Cask in Point. Today we are doing a video that I have been wanting to do ever since I found out about this bottle. Today we are reviewing Rare Character's KOA. Now if you don't know anything about Rare Character, you need to know more about Rare Character. Rare Character started in 2021 with two good friends named Pablo and Peter. Essentially, they had seen what the COVID market was doing to the restaurant industry, and they thought, how can we help revive this? How can we help bring good whiskey to the world? And so they started sourcing whiskeys from all over the place. MGP whiskey in Indiana, Dickel whiskey in Tennessee, Heaven Hill whiskey in Kentucky, and basically any other place that had amazing whiskey and was letting them to buy it. And so they bottled all this under their Rare Character label, and now they have about 25 different product lines. They have TKO, which is Dickel Rye, confirmed Dickel Rye, that didn't go through the Lincoln County process, which is typically what makes Tennessee whiskey have that kind of charcoaly, like Jack Daniels flavor. Then they have HRY, HR7, they have SRY, they have so many different barrel codes, they have Rio. Most of these are going to be Kentucky bourbons around 6 or 7 years, around 110 to 120 proof, and usually very solid for the price. Most of these bottles retail between $100 and $150, probably on the lower end of that. But KOA is their new gem, their new unicorn. And why is it special? Well, it's a 75-25 for bourbon, which means that it's not super rye forward, but it's also not, there doesn't have 10% rye or 12% rye, so you're going to get some rye flavor on this. But what makes it special is that it is incredibly high proof. So KOAs, the first about 4 or 5 of them all came out at Hazmat, which is above 140 proof. Actually, technically it's exactly 140 proof, but it means that like this Just Bottles KOA that I have is 140.82 proof. Now, this is a 137 proof, and it seems that as time goes on, as they release more KOAs, they're probably going to lean more in the high 130s and not in the 140s. And unfortunately, bourbon lovers do love that Hazmat and love their 140 proofs. I love my 140 proofs. I love my Hazmats. If you've watched any of my videos, you know I love proof on my whiskey. And so this is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. It's approximately 9 years. This is 8 years, 8 months. This is 8 years, 11 months. And it's 140 proof, 137 proof, whatever. That sounds amazing. And so today we are reviewing 3 barrels. We're reviewing this Riley's pick from Wisconsin. We're reviewing this Just Bottles pick from New York. And I actually got to speak with the owner of this store who did this pick. And he said that it was his first ever barrel pick. And once he tasted it, he knew that it was just absolutely amazing. And so he got it for the store. And he's actually a veteran. And he put a photo of first responders on it, as he is a big fan of first responders, which I very much respect. And then Riley's here has a nice photo of a fireball, and I understand it because KOA is a fireball. And then in the middle here we have Prime Barrel, which I'll put a photo somewhere on the screen. This is a 140 proof, I believe 8 year, 9 month, which was done, I believe, in Kentucky or Tennessee. But that being said, we have 3 amazing whiskeys here lined up for us today. All KOAs, all different single barrels of KOAs. We're going to taste them, we're going to compare them. We're going to find out if the slightly below Hazmat can hold its weight against the Hazmat, whether this deserves to be, so far, my number 1 whiskey of the year. I did write a review on it, which I will link in the description. But let's start off from the lowest proof, Riley's KOA. So on the nose here, I'm getting a little bit of musty oak, which is surprising because this isn't a particularly old bourbon, but 8 years and 8 months, when you are going to bottle it at that high of proof, every single flavor is going to come out in spades. And so even though this may not have a ton of musty oak relative to most things, at that proof, it smells like it has a lot more. There's red fruit on this, there's plums, there's cherries, there's going to be a little bit of stone fruit, there's going to be peaches and nectarines in there. Definitely some caramel, definitely some sweet oak, a little bit of dry oak, but not much. And actually, I'm getting some funky fruit on this too. Some melons, some mangoes, some tropical fruit. It's a mix of so many different flavors, so many different types of fruit. It's definitely fruit forward, if nothing else, but there's definitely oak in there and caramel to kind of give it a good base. But then there's all these different kinds of fruit. I'm definitely getting around 15 flavor notes on this one. Some raspberries, some blackberries. Definitely a little bit of heat, which is understandable at 137 proof. Now, these have all been sitting for about 30-40 minutes. This was cracked approximately a month ago. This is a fresh crack, so I don't think that will affect that much, but we will see here. Yeah, I mean, that is just so good. So much fruit backed up with so much oak. I'm going to take a sip of water here, and then we are going to get into this KOA. Wow. The melon is really strong on this. The mango. The red fruit is coming through in spades. There's a lot of rye spice and dill adding to the oak, the dry oak, the sweet oak. There's a little bit of like soft oak in there. A little bit of toasted oak. The finish, at least on that first sip, was medium to long length. It wasn't super long. That is really nice. There are so many different flavors on this one. I mean, and that's really the masterclass. That's why these, KOAs they're actually not commanding too much on secondary, and that's just because it's a if you know kind of product, and so obviously these aren't going to command as much as like a Willet Purple Top here, but it's just so good, really battling with the best here. I'm going to take a second sip of this, and then I will go through, and then at the end we'll do a third sip and rate them all. Yeah, a lot of rye spice, a lot of red fruit, and there's just so much going on that. It's hot, it's punch, it's so flavorful. It's definitely medium to long length. There's a pepper note that's going to really take you out, but there's still a little bit of lingering like cranberry and raspberry and cherry. That is just incredible. Now, let's move on to the second one. Prime Barrel's 140 proof. Now, this is a sample that I got from a good friend of mine, Van Bourbon. So, thank you, Van Bourbon, for sharing. And today I am doing half-ounce pours, and that's partially because we're doing insanely high proof. That's partially because these are so good that I don't want to waste 3 ounces in a single video. I mean, it's just that good. These aren't really going to come around a ton in the future. Apparently, I have only 18 barrels of them in total, and around 10 have released so far. So, get your hands on this if you can. This one has a lot more rye spice on the nose. Still getting the melon, the raspberry, the cranberry, the cherry, but definitely a little bit more caramel and rye spice on this. A little bit of dill. Some sweet oak, some toasted oak. Not really any dry oak, though, interestingly enough. Yeah, and overall tastes a little bit sweeter and a little bit spicier than that first barrel here. Definitely say on the nose, it beats it out by not much, but definitely by a little bit here. And if I'm being honest, so far we're in the 8s, and I don't know if we're going to leave the 8s. I doubt we are, and we may even be getting better over time. But let's see just how good this prime barrel is. A lot more rye spice on that. That's interesting. So there's definitely the cranberry, the melon. I honestly like that a little bit less than the Riley's pick here. It's not bad. It's still going to be in the 8s. It's still going to be up there. But the finish isn't actually that long. It's more medium length. And there's cranberry on that. There's like dry. There is a little bit of dry oak on the end. There's definitely the pepper and the rye spice that are continuing to go through. It's a little less complex on the palate. On the nose, it's really good. I think it's better than on the nose, but the rye spice is just a little bit overpowering to this relative to what I had here on the Riley's pick here. Now I'll take the second sip and then we'll move on to the beautiful Just bottles. But let's see here. Yeah, I mean there's a little bit more sweet oak, musty oak, toasted oak than I had the first time around, but definitely more oaky caramel spice relative to fruit, whereas this is just a ton of fruit. Let's take a second sip here. It's a great bourbon. It is a little bit drier than the Riley's pick here. Overall, I do think it's a little bit worse than the Riley's pick. It's still an amazing bottle, and we are comparing like nectar of the gods here. So You know, when I say that this one is a little bit worse, it's still battling in the mid eights, I believe. Definitely getting more of that. There's a little bit of dry oak on the tannic oak that I'm just not absolutely loving relative to the sweet oak and the toasted oak that I'm getting on the nose. The fruit just isn't nearly as strong, but it's still very good. Now, let's do the just bottles, and then we'll go through and rate them all. And this is your first cask and point review. I rate every whiskey I've ever tried. My website has about 80 ratings right now. I've rated about 400 in total, and I've rated probably about 30 or 40 now on this YouTube channel. So, mostly 8s mean they're weekly sippers, 7 means they're more daily sippers, 9 is going to be like Pappy 15, really good years of William Lou Weller, Thomas H. Handy, and then 10s are just your absolutely perfect whiskey, and when I find it, I'll let you know what it is, but let's get into this just bottles and see how it's going to stand up. Oh, wow. That nose, it has a lot more musty oak on it, which I really like. I think it has more fruit than any of the ones that I've had. A lot more melon, raspberry, cherry. I mean, look, we're going to have similar tasting notes on this, but I think what they're highlighting, at least so far, this is more of that caramel, spicy, oaky. This is more of that fruit, but this is a lot of the fruit, definitely more fruit than the prime barrel second place here. But a lot of oak. And that it's a musty oak. It's a toasted oak. There's definitely caramel on this. I mean, that smells like a 15-year-old bourbon right there. Oh my god, I just spilled like the... Oh, I'm heartbroken. That is terribly unfortunate. Oh man. That's a whiskey I could smell for 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, there's caramel, there's a little bit of dry oak, but not much. There's all these different flavor fruits. You're getting the same stone fruit of the peach and the nectarine. You're getting the red fruit. You're getting some black currant, some red currant. You're getting some rye spice on this. I mean, you're just getting 15 different flavor notes on this. Let's taste it and see if it is going to be the winner. Oh my god. So the red fruit on this is coming a lot stronger than either of these first two, interestingly enough. But it's that oak that's really mixing with it and clashing with it. Where you have like a ton of this red fruit, and the stone fruit is much lighter here. The peach and the nectarine is much lighter. But that red fruit, that plum, that cherry, that cranberry, I mean, that even a little bit of apple here is just coming through so strong. And there's some musty oak throughout the pour. That finish is medium long. I may even say long here. I'll have to take the second sip and see. But that is so good. It smells the most refined out of any of them. Definitely getting a lot more melon too. That kind of tropical melon, mango. Even a little bit of pineapple on this, like a citrusy note. I mean, I could sit here and probably name 30 tasting notes off of this. There is just so much of that going on. Definitely the best on the nose. Let's take this sip here, and then I will give it a rating, and then we will go through the last two and give them ratings as well. I am blown away. The toasted oak that just comes all the way through. I mean, I want to pour more of this. If I would let myself, I would finish this bottle in 2 weeks. It's that good. I wish I had a backup of this. I mean, there's just so much of that musty oak that's combining with the red fruit. Now, when I initially rated this, I rated this a 9.1. And a 9.1 would mean it's whiskey of the year. It's so absolutely amazing. It's better than Thomas H. Handy. It's better than William Lou Weller. And I'm debating right now if I want to change that score, but it's definitely in that ballpark. Like, it is close to a 9. Like, this is a seriously incredible whiskey. Now, look, it doesn't taste 140 proof. It probably drinks closer to 120. When I had first opened it, it actually did taste like 140 proof, and I was getting like a serious gut punch out of it. And I kind of liked it more that way, but it's just still just absolutely amazing. I mean, I almost want to pour more just so I could drink more on this review, but I think I have a good idea here. I think I'm going to go 8.8. I think it's worthy of tying some of the best Willet purple tops that I've had. I think there are just a million flavors on it. I think on the day it could be anywhere between an 8.7 and probably a 9.1. I think it's just, you know what, I want more. I, this is probably one of the very few times you may see me pour from a bottle. Because I am the sample king, as you guys can tell. But that is just, yeah, I need more of that. Oh my god, there's toasted oak, there's musty oak, which I absolutely love, and then there's just so much fruit coming through here. Oh man, if I could, I would buy like 2 cases of this bottle. I would drink it over the course of the next probably 2 or 3 years. It wouldn't even last like 5, 6, 7 years. I mean, that is just so incredible. To the point where like I have to hide this bottle from myself, or else I will drink it like every day if I could. Definitely the best bottle that I own. There's just so much going on there. I mean, that is just incredible here. You know, I'm gonna take this final sip here. Your mouth fills with spice, but then it comes through with so much red fruit, so much oak, so much going on this pour. I mean, that is incredible. I'm gonna stay at my rating at an 8.8. I would pay $200 for that. I would probably pay $250 for that. I think it is right neck and neck with my favorite years of my favorite B-Tax. I think it beats out Eagle Rare 17. I think it beats out George C. Stagg 2023, which I will do reviews on that stuff soon. That is an amazing whiskey. There are just so many different flavors. I think that is totally deserving of a whiskey of the year. But let's go back to these last two. Right now, this is in the lead, and it's not as close as I was hoping. But well, let's try Prime Barrel. Let's go back to Riley's, and let's see what we think. So on the second time around, there is a little bit more musty oak. And that caramel is coming through much stronger. And like I said, I mean, this is one where the fruit is there, but it's not nearly as strong as I think the fruit is on the other two bottles. If I'm being honest, though, so far, I think these are drinking so below 140 proof that if the secondary value is $100 or $200 difference, I would say it's more dependent on the actual barrel than it is on the exact proof, because this is just drinking nowhere close to 140 proof. None of them are. It just smells incredible. I mean, these whiskeys, I mean, I could sit here, if I could, all day with you guys and drink these. I mean, I would finish a third of this bottle in a single night. So good here. Yeah, so I do think this one is going to be in third place. And I think it's in third place because it's lacking the red fruit on the late palate, on the mid palate. It's a lot of dry oak and caramel that's going to come through there with that rye spice, which means I think it lacks a little bit of uniqueness. Where I think on some of the best whiskeys that I've had, you're just getting so much complexity throughout the pour, where I think this one is giving me that kind of complexity on the nose, but on the palate, on the finish, it's just not absolutely blowing me away. I actually don't think it's that close to this KOA Just Bottles, if I'm being honest. And I'm going to actually talk to some of my friends, because I know people that have both, and I'm curious if they agree with me. Obviously, if you've had these, please give me all your feedback in the comments below, because I'm so curious. But I think this Just Bottles thing is kind of killing it right now. I think we're looking at 8.8 on this one. I would say this is an 8.4. I think it's, and I do rate on an exponential scale, so the difference between like a 5 and a 6 is the same difference between probably like an 8.1 and an 8.4. Like, you're looking at a massive difference between the two of these, because in that way, we can really differentiate the best of the best. If we just use a linear scale and the same amount of whiskeys were a 9 as were a 10 as were an 8, then you just wouldn't get nearly as good of an idea, because the best of the best whiskey is so much better than the best whiskey. So, yeah, I mean, it's still good. There's still some melon on there. You're still a KOA. I think that's 100% worth $150, which I believe this retailed for $150 and this retailed for $125. And this Prime Barrel, I think, was all about $150 as well. So, totally worth that. I would buy a backup of that. I'd buy 2 backups of that. But if I was able to buy more of these Just Bottles, I'd buy a case. Now, let's finish off this review with a 137 Riley's pick. Wow. The cherries and cranberries became much stronger as this sat. Rye spice, definitely a bit of caramel, a little bit of all the different kinds of oak, sweet oak, dry oak, soft oak. A little bit more ethanol nose, I will say, than these other two, and that could just be because this is a neck pour, and this will mellow out a little bit more. I did get a lot more ethanol the first time I drank this than the second time around, so it is probably just a neck pour thing. That is nice. I mean, that I would say it's definitely last place for the nose, but let's see how it stands up with the palate. Yeah, that is so good. It's better than it's better than the Prime Barrel. I don't think it's actually that close to the Just Barrels. So good. I had initially planned to do a half ounce of this because I was limiting myself, but they're that good. They deserve their full ounces. Yeah, I mean, look, it's not getting the same kind of musty oak on the nose. For $125, this is the best whiskey you could buy for $125, but it is a little bit worse on the nose than both of these because I think these were getting a lot more of that musty oak that I think added an extra dimension that I really enjoyed, whereas this is just giving me so much fruit. And look, there's obviously musty oak in the backdrop, there's caramel, there's all these different kinds of fruits, there's the stone fruit, there's the red fruit, there's the black fruit, but on the nose it's not as interesting, it's not as pleasing because I think it's just showing so much more fruit and not showing nearly as much oak. But again, I am critiquing the best of the best here, so it's still an amazing bottle, but let's take this last sip here. Wow, I have that much of that juice left. Debating between an 8.5 and an 8.6. I think the Just Bottles wins today. I think the Prime Barrel is in last. I think I'll give it an 8.6. I think it is such an enjoyable pour. It's a little bit softer. So if you want nearly as many flavors without as much of a punch and as much heat, I think you may actually like this one more. But I like heat, I like punch, I like proof. This Just Bottles pick is just amazing. But anyways, that's Rare Character KOA. If you can find one of these, you should buy it. You should buy it immediately. They are probably sold out in your area if they had them, but just absolutely amazing bottles. I think they are going to be up there when we conclude at the end of this year the Whiskies of the Year. Right now, this Just Bottles is in #1 for me. Absolutely divine stuff. But with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative for you. If you don't have a KOA, go buy a KOA. If you only have one, go buy two. If you only have two like me, if I could get a third, if I get a fifth, I'd get a fifth. Amazing whiskey, amazing stuff. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.